Lewis Hamilton turned the wheel into turn 5, felt the rear step out, and didn't correct it immediately. He waited. For 4 seasons, that moment had been a warning sign. The instant when the floor would stall, the rear would snap, and the lap would die. But this time, the slide kept talking. Progressive, catchable, honest. Across the garage, Ferrari's engineers watched the same data trace they'd been chasing since 2022. Pitch, yaw, load. Behaving differently at the exact point that had punished Hamilton the most. The question wasn't whether the car was fast. It was whether the sport itself had finally moved back toward what Hamilton's instincts were built for. Because the FIA didn't just tweak the rules for 2026, they removed the exact aerodynamic mechanisms that broke one of the most dominant driving styles Formula One has ever seen. And once those are gone, the hierarchy everyone assumes may not survive the reset. Lewis Hamilton only won 2 races across the ground effect era. That statistic has been repeated so often it's started to feel like proof of decline. But statistics without context can lie. In 2020 alone, Hamilton won 21 races. His braking technique, spatial awareness, and rotation control didn't disappear between seasons. What changed was the physics underneath him. From 2022 onward, Formula One introduced cars that demanded a fundamentally different relationship between driver and platform. The new ground effect regulations placed aerodynamic performance in the narrow gap between the floor and the track surface. That gap had to remain stable within millimeters. Any pitch, dive, or yaw could stall airflow through the Venturi tunnels, collapsing downforce instantly. Hamilton's natural technique attacks exactly that phase. He brakes later and harder than almost anyone on the grid. The aggressive deceleration pitches the car forward, loading the front axle. As brake pressure comes off, the rear rotates around that loaded front end. It's a style built on movement, controlled instability, and it depends on the car being allowed to pitch and dive through transitions. Ground effect cars couldn't tolerate that freedom. Mercedes spent 4 seasons trying to reconcile Hamilton's instinctive entry aggression with a platform that punished movement. They publicly acknowledged they never fully solved it. This wasn't about adaptation effort, it was about mechanical contradiction. By 2024, the qualifying head-to-head told the story clearly. George Russell led Hamilton 19 sessions to 5. In 2022, Hamilton had actually averaged 12 thousandths of a second ahead. In 2023, they split qualifying evenly. The drop wasn't sudden loss of pace. It was a growing mismatch as ground effect refinement tightened the platform further. The key mistake in public discourse was assuming results reflected capability. In reality, they reflected compatibility. And once you understand that distinction, the 2026 regulation reset stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like an inflection point, because every single element that punished Hamilton's style is being stripped away at once. Lewis Hamilton's braking instinct wasn't developed in Formula One, it was built before he turned 10. Anthony Hamilton's training method was brutally simple. He would walk karting circuits and stand at the braking point used by the fastest driver, usually the British champion. Then he would step several meters further down the track. That new point became Lewis's braking marker. Not where the champion braked, where Lewis would learn to survive. Hamilton later described spinning and crashing repeatedly until the technique stuck. The repetition burned a response deeper than conscious correction, a braking instinct that activates automatically under pressure. That conditioning shaped everything downstream. When Hamilton first tested for McLaren, data traces showed extreme instability under braking and corner entry. Paddy Lowe, then technical director, noted that established race winners like Kimi Räikkönen or Juan Pablo Montoya would have immediately complained. Hamilton didn't mention it. What felt unstable to others felt normal to him. That tolerance created an efficiency advantage. Because Hamilton remained comfortable as the rear moved around, he carried momentum deeper into corners even as rear tires degraded. That reduced the need for aggressive throttle application on exit, lowering fuel consumption and preserving traction over long stints. The aggression on entry created efficiency everywhere else. That entire framework depends on one thing: predictability. Hamilton doesn't need a stable rear, he needs a readable one. Ground effect cars removed that readability. The downforce didn't degrade progressively, it vanished. Millimeter changes in ride height could turn grip into nothing without warning. The rear snap wasn't communicative, it was terminal. The difference matters. Drivers can manage instability. They cannot manage sudden absence. By building cars that punished pitch and rewarded platform stiffness, the regulations inverted the value of Hamilton's strongest traits. The skill that once separated him from the field became a liability under a floor that demanded suppression rather than exploitation of movement. Understanding this history is critical, because 2026 doesn't just alter performance envelopes. It removes the aerodynamic cliff edge that made Hamilton's instincts unusable. The most misunderstood part of the 2026 reset is the idea that the FIA merely adjusted ground effect. They didn't. They dismantled it. The Venturi tunnels, the aerodynamic structures that defined ride height sensitivity since 2022, are gone entirely. In their place sits a flatter central floor section that echoes pre-2022 philosophy, where downforce generation is dominated by wings rather than proximity to the track. The numbers matter. Minimum weight drops from 800 kilograms to 768. That 32 kilogram reduction changes how the car responds to inputs. Lighter cars rotate more willingly, recover from slides faster, and carry less momentum when things go wrong. Wheelbase shortens by 200 millimeters, capped at 3,400. Overall width narrows by 100 millimeters to 1,900. Both changes reduce rotational inertia, allowing the rear to come around more naturally under braking. Tires narrow too. Fronts shrink from 305 millimeters to 275. Rears drop from 405 to 375. Peak grip decreases, but transitions from grip to slide become more progressive. That progression is the key. Overall downforce drops by an estimated 15 to 30%. What remains comes from wings and active aerodynamic elements rather than floor sensitivity. This removes the millimeter-perfect ride height window that punished pitch. Cars can dive again. They can rotate again. They can talk to the driver through movement instead of punishing it. For a driver whose technique lives at the boundary between grip and slide, this is not subtle. It's foundational. The FIA didn't design these regulations for Lewis Hamilton, but they removed precisely the mechanisms that nullified his strengths. And when the underlying physics changes, so does the meaning of driver input. Max Verstappen dominated the ground effect era by mastering exactly what it demanded. At the first Barcelona test in February 2022, his inputs looked nothing like earlier versions of himself. Early braking, smooth steering, gradual power application, movements so gentle they barely registered in telemetry. Multiple analysts noted that Verstappen appeared to have developed a style specifically optimized for underfloor aerodynamics. Christian Horner later pinpointed where Verstappen separated himself: braking into slow corners. He managed a rear end on the edge of control with total confidence, likening the feel to a motorcycle rider sensing traction loss. Alex Albon's description was even clearer. He compared Verstappen's spec front-end response to a computer cursor with sensitivity maxed out. Any input produced immediate reaction. The distinction between Verstappen and Hamilton is not aggression. Both need rear movement. The difference is predictability. Verstappen is comfortable extracting lap time from inherently unstable setups that wind tunnel data suggests are fastest. Hamilton needs instability that arrives in a controlled, readable way. Ground effect rewarded Verstappen's smoothness and punished Hamilton's attack. 2026 removes the underfloor platform Verstappen optimized for. That doesn't mean Verstappen's pace disappears. His adaptability ranks among the best ever, but the playing field shifts away from the aerodynamic characteristics that amplified his advantage. Even Verstappen himself offered a clue. He admitted he wouldn't miss these cars, citing physical discomfort and lack of enjoyment. When both drivers at opposite ends of the style spectrum dislike the same generation, it signals a fundamental issue with the formula. The reset doesn't crown a new king, it removes a bias. Ferrari topped the unofficial Barcelona shakedown in January 2026. Lewis Hamilton posted a 1-minute 16.348 on the final day, 97 thousandths ahead of George Russell. Lap times mean little at this stage. Fuel loads and engine modes remain unknown. What matters is feedback. Hamilton described the car as oversteery, snappy, sliding. but easier to catch. More fun. Those words matter. Oversteer and snap should alarm a driver who struggled with rear instability for 4 seasons. The fact Hamilton found them enjoyable reveals that the instability has changed character. It's progressive. Charles Leclerc's reaction confirmed it. Same car, same team. Opposite response. He admitted he wasn't enjoying it yet. That divergence is telling. Drivers conditioned by ground effect rigidity find freedom uncomfortable. Drivers built on movement recognize it instantly. Ferrari's preparation adds context. Fred Vasseur confirmed development focus shifted to 2026 as early as late April 2025. That gave Ferrari more runway than most. The car isn't finished. But the philosophy is visible, and philosophy is what Hamilton needed back. Credibility requires restraint. Hamilton turns 41 in January 2026. Regulation resets don't always reward experience. His race engineer relationship resets too. Riccardo Adami was reassigned after communication issues in 2025. Building the instinctive bond Hamilton shared with Peter Bonington over nearly 2 decades takes time. Ferrari's engine braking characteristics present another challenge. Hamilton's braking muscle memory was developed at Mercedes. Ferrari's approach feels unfamiliar and requires adaptation regardless of aerodynamic alignment. Testing history also warns caution. Ferrari topped preseason testing repeatedly from 2016 to 2019 and lost every championship. Unknown variables remain massive. The reset removes obstacles, it does not guarantee execution. Strip away hype and nostalgia. The technical evidence shows this. Venturi tunnels removed, ride height sensitivity eliminated, minimum weight reduced to 768 kilograms. Wheelbase capped at 3,400 millimeters. Downforce shifted to wings and active elements. Every change moves the platform toward Hamilton's instincts. His feedback aligns. The ground effect snap is gone. The slide talks again. That doesn't hand out trophies, but it restores relevance. In the data, the answers were always there. In the garage, they were complicated. Lewis Hamilton didn't forget how to drive. The sport moved away from what his instincts were built to exploit. 2026 removes that barrier. It doesn't guarantee dominance. Execution still decides championships. But the technical obstacles that systematically worked against him are gone. The cars he hated are finished. What replaced them carries the fingerprints of the era he dominated. So here's the question that actually matters. If the regulations no longer suppress Hamilton's strengths, and the platform once again rewards readable instability, does Formula One discover that its hierarchy was shaped more by physics than by form? Or has the sport already moved on?